I am very, very glad that you're with us again. If for some reason you didn't catch the first interview, you'll still get something out of this, but I would strongly recommend you get back to the first interview, because the first interview was about why. And I am personally convinced that a lot of us activate the how to do stuff before we've really wrestled with the why we should do it. And so our first interview revolved around why. Why should our vision of discipleship include a vision, an active vision for the nations? That was the first interview. This second interview has to do with how. How can we do it? How can we do it? My name is Randy Stewart. You're with us, Friends of Tyrannus, a ministry that is just committed to the identifying, the supporting, the encouraging, the raising up of Christian leaders in our day. And these are my friends. This is Rick Rohlin. Rick Rohlin has just recently started a ministry called International Sports Academy, which quite frankly is him using the hunger, the desire for all nations to discover sport opportunity, using it as a hook to draw young men and women to a platform where they can hear the gospel, where they can be engaged with the gospel. My friend Christopher Vengala is a veteran YWAMer, is what it is. I mean, when Christopher became a follower of Jesus, he was like born in YWAM. You know, YWAM, Youth with a Mission, is probably, if it's not the largest, it's one of the largest mission sending organizations in the world. They have not given me a card yet, so I'm not a card carrying YWAMer, but I'm pretty close to a card carrying YWAMer. I've been involved with YWAM for as long as I can remember. Scott Dalton is the director of Missio Global, which is an effort worldwide. They're in many different nations where first, discipleship, second, equip leaders, and third, plant churches. And this is not something they bring in to do for you. They bring it in to the local church of Brazil or Kenya or the Ukraine. They bring it into the local church and equip that local church to carry off that three-pronged mission. These guys are good guys. And so give your good ear to them. Give your good ear to them. Get your pen on out. Jot some things down. These are really, really good guys. So, guys, I'm just going to put it out there in front of you, and just unmute your microphone. Let's hear what your response is. How can the church build into its mission of discipleship a vision for the nations? How can we do it? How can we do it? Jump in, guys.
Yeah, I'd be happy to kick that off.
Please, Scott.
There's, in preparing for this, I was just thinking about this very question, and there's two things that I would say. Number one, it's very interesting. It's very important, I should say, what is said from the pulpit and what is not said from the pulpit in our churches. Actually, Christopher mentioned this too in our first interview, that it has to come top down. Let me just share this with you. The founder of Missio Global happened to also be our pastor, our senior pastor of our church in Syracuse, New York, who was our sending pastor when my family moved to Brazil in 2004. So we have a long time connection. But he always said to us as a veteran pastor, the easiest way for me to kill a program, I don't have to do anything to kill a program. All I have to do is stop talking about it from the pulpit.
Yeah. So good.
That's all I have to do is stop talking about it. I mean, Rick is a veteran pastor, way more years than I. You could speak to that as well. So, and then the other side of it, what is said? And just to give my observations, and I will do this quickly. You know, having left this country in 2004, having moved back in 2018, and as a missionary, it was clear to me, very, very clear to us, that the missions focus in the church, the American church in general, diminished over that time. And what's interesting, I think it was probably giving less money. I have to verify those stats, but what was really clear is missions in the nations were not being talked about anymore from the pulpit. And you want to do we're looking at practicals. It starts with that. What is spoken in and before the congregation? What are they exposed to? Every single charismatic church that I knew of in the 90s, what did they have hanging in the lobby? From the lobby ceiling, it was flags.
Flags.
But the flags have all come down.
Yep.
Flags have all come down. When was the last time you had a missionary speak at a church?
Yeah.
Not just give a 5-minute update. It's very difficult to even get into the schedule of a church. You know, when I used to come back in the 2000s, I would contact all of our supporting churches and say, hey, we're going to be back in the States. And they were like, great, we'll schedule in. I would come in for 7 weeks. I'd have a church all 7 weeks that we are speaking in, and they would make the room for it. That has completely disappeared. And so you want to talk about being practical, is what is being spoken from the pulpit and what is the congregation being exposed to? Most churches are still giving money. They're just not talking about it. I asked a pastor here a couple of years ago, and I will cut it off here. Hey, you know, we support a lot of missionaries, but the church doesn't know it. This is after we came back to the States. Why don't we put, something out in the lobby, put a map up there, put the traditional map up there, who do we support? And the pastor just said, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people don't even know what they're supporting, what the church, or what the people are supporting.
Brother, that had to have been so frustrating and disheartening for you when you came back off the mission field to see such a drastic change.
Yeah, and let me just say one last thing, because this is the last thought that I actually had. And
I don't believe that either.
was that I believe the root of a lot of this was throughout the 90s. I just remember throughout the 90s, the word from even missiologists and Bible schools and everything was that it's time to pass the baton in world missions to the 75% church. In other words, the church that's it's actually up to 80% now. Practically 80% of the world church is outside the Western nations now. It's like, it's time to pass the baton. What they were saying is not be domineering, make sure that the national leaders are raised up. And I totally understand that. But by repeatedly, it was the wrong analogy. Because the analogy is, I ran my race, I hand my baton, I just go sit down and watch now. And it doesn't work now. What it is we just added to the team, and we said it so much that the church actually embraced it.
Wow, that's good. Good observation. Good observation.
Well, and if I can jump in on that,
Please.
Scott, you're talking about communicating, and that's what discipleship is, right? Communicating in all forms. And we're not, Randy, I remember forever, you're saying over communicate, right? When you're so tired of hearing it, then they might be getting it for the first time, that whole thing. And I think that I completely agree, Scott. We have stopped communicating. And, even on my notes, I have, flags, maps, books, guest speakers, all these things are things that they shaped me. I'm telling you, flags shaped me. And because that's communicating, right? Communicating with pictures on the wall, and it's communicating, and we're not communicating. I mean, who's reading mission books now? I can remember in finals week, this happened to me twice. I do not recommend this. I got into a book on missions, which was my passion. Well, I'm not studying missions. I'm at Penn State University studying whatever I studied. I got so into it, I couldn't concentrate in my finals at all because it was my passion. Like, man, we got to get, if we lose that, and if we don't communicate, the natural thing is always self-serving. So a church will always self-serve.
Oh
You know,
my.
ministry in America has gotten pretty expensive to do the last 15 years, right? We love the digital world. Well, you know what I used to be able to do? I used to take a Bible and I used to teach.
Yep.
Well, those days are long gone, right? Now it takes a team of people with thousands of dollars of equipment just to have a 5-minute bleep put out on. So, you know, it's that communicating. I think it's so important. And
Yeah.
obviously you can only communicate what you believe. So if the senior communicator doesn't truly believe something, they got nothing to communicate. So they go hand in hand. What do I fully believe? And then am I, when I think I'm over communicating it, I've just begun.
Oh boy. That is thank you. Christopher,
Well,
what are you thinking, buddy? I can see the smoke coming right out your
Yes. Just to add to what has already been said, I really think it's important to over communicate, and I want to use Rick as a little bit of an example here. So, if you really want your church to have a heart for the nations, they've got to have a heart for their own neighborhood, for their own zip code.
Yep.
If that doesn't happen, I think it's just going to be an event once a year. Let's just buy new Nalgene bottles and go to REI and do some shopping, and just let's go and hold some brown babies across the sea. It's just going to be a little bit of an entertainment.
Yeah.
But if the most successful churches that you see that are having a great missions movement internationally have something locally going on.
Yeah.
It's not just giving. Of course, this year we went and bought Christmas gifts for our family lavishly. We do that all the time. That's great. Paying bills is fantastic, but we've got to be able to track transformation in our zip code. There's one church in Richmond that supports me. They had this. They're probably one of the most biggest missions international churches I've been a part of. But they have a heart for the local trailer park.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Like, they go bring the people every Sunday for church. Although there's different economics in the church, it's not a poor church, in other words, but they make room for that. There's this cross culture of different economic groups coming to the church. Less barriers, and they said the way we're going to track our progress in that particular community is we're going to see how many 911 calls are going on before we came into that community versus our time. And the 911 calls dropped drastically. But there's this continuous active reaching a local community is going on, not on an event basis. They're part of our church. They're part of our weekly outreaches and everything.
Yes.
And that's why, their international strength is as great. Rick is doing that. He's got a local sports club. Am I correct, Rick?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, they need something all the time, not just once.
What you're talking about, Christopher, is that's discipleship, right? Your heart gets changed and your feet go to work. And so your feet work, a disciple works wherever he is. A disciple loves whoever's in front of him and is always looking for the next and beyond. So that's really a gauge for discipleship. The all of the above is discipleship.
I have found some of the most aggressive arguments that I've had with other church leaders, and some of the best fruit that has come out of winning the argument is, you have no idea how many times I have taught, and it's not like I'm pushing any kind of program or pushing anything. It's just almost in a testimonial way, I have shared with the value of being engaged in a short-term missions project. And the kickback that I've gotten is, yeah, but they're so expensive. Why would you spend all that money to go over there when we got things right here? When in actuality, they're not doing anything with what's right here either.
Yeah.
And yet, time and time and time again, I've sent people on short-term missions projects. I've led people on short-term missions projects, and the high percentage of those, and I'm not talking 52%, I'm talking like 80, 90% of those people were their lives were transformed. And when they came back to their church at home, they brought that passion and that transformational grace with them, and it had exponential impact. What are your thoughts about short-term missions? And please don't tell me they're just too expensive and we can't do it. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit too as a receiver of short-term missions, being in another country. I totally agree with what you just said. I think balance is a key.
Oh, yeah.
I think that totally my personal opinion here, just my observations. Like in the 80s and 90s was really a big missions push, which I think kind of came out of the 70s, you know. Whenever there's a move of God, side point here, whenever there's a real awakening, a move of God, like there was in the United States in the 60s and 70s, it always awakens. Two things happen. They write new songs and there's a missions movement.
No, true.
It's a good observation.
So there's in the 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, there was a real missions focus, especially or heavily with short-term missions. My personal perspective is that it was more than necessary, because it is to send 10, 16-year-olds to another country is $20,000. You better be supporting some missionaries in the field.
That's right.
Before you do that.
That's right.
So that's the first thing. You can have them both.
Right.
You can have them both, but you better be supporting missionaries first.
It can't be an either or thing. It's got to be a both and thing.
Yeah, and what Christopher just said was huge, that if you're not active locally, you're not going to have the passion for internationally.
Absolutely.
So all of those young people, which I keep saying young people, they're not all young that do missions trips, of course, short-term trips. The passion that they bring back is great. But I do want to say what you said is exactly correct. What tends to happen is that people who go on the trip are probably impacted more than the people at the nation that they went to.
Yep.
Okay, at the nation that they went to, that was just, oh, well, we had some Americans here. That was cool. And some of them will get saved and so forth. But let me tell you, as a receiver of those teams, it is more impact for the team members. And that's okay.
I agree.
That's okay.
I agree.
That's okay, because it has a role if they bring that passion back to the United States. Mm-hmm. But if they don't have that church, like Christopher said, who's going to continue to fuel that passion even locally, it'll eventually wane.
That's right. That's right. What do you think?
There's a whole lot that I said there, and I'll let you guys sort that out because I threw a big mess on the table.
Chris,
well, I would just
go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
Well, I would just piggyback on that and say, of course, I've been on a lot of trips, taking a lot of people, but the heart of it's got to be to enhance the work on the ground when you go. You know, if you're going to Brazil, it should be what you want, what's going to enhance your ministry. And so the team has to bless the local place. They got to bless, not cause a mess, right? A lot of short-term teams cause a mess, and they mess things up. So that's the leadership, though. That's not the people Absolutely. You're taking. So the leadership needs to set up the team to really bless the local recipient, do what they want, enhance their ministry. So when you leave, the work continues on. And so that would be the thing. I'm a huge fan of them, as long as they're going and not harming the work that stays there. And Absolutely. So I guess I would say, make sure you bless and not create a mess.
Very, very good.
Yeah, and that's good. little phrase there, and you're right. It is totally dependent on the leadership and the preparation and the communication, and while the
Right.
team's being developed between the receivers and the comers.
Mhm.
Christopher, you've been on both sides of short-term missions. You've sent teams, you've received teams. Talk to us a little bit, would you?
I know there's a lot of criticism towards short-term missions, and some of them are extremely valid. Though that's what I do for a living. Train young people for missions, short-term and long-term. And the concerns and the frustrations most of them are true and real. But however, I don't know the exact statistics, but I'll just be quite general. Most of long-term missionaries found their call on a short-term mission trip.
Totally.
And so you've got to kind of look at this a little bit, come from God's perspective. We can't really kind of crunch numbers on short-term missions, but everything adds up in the end.
Yeah.
I know, Scott, the people that go on the mission trip are more blessed than the people that receive it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to change in our lifetime. When William Carey and all of those people went for long-term missions, it was just the opposite, but there are more missionaries than there were back then. But I really think short-term missions is part of fulfilling the Great Commission. You can't quantify as well as a church plant, but it's pre-church plant, and if the church has to be planted. Go ahead.
Well, we're talking here about making disciples. It's what better tool to make disciples than pull people out of their culture and put them in an uncomfortable position and share with them. So when we're talking discipleship, how do you ever quantify discipleship? But it is a massive tool in discipleship that leads to loving the nations.
It is.
I agree. I've also been of the perspective that I think like every American should go on a mission trip sometime in their life. You've got to get out of what you know. And there's such a big world out there, and we're so comfortable here. And yes, and we always say it's like, if you're considering being a missionary in a mid-longer term, you need to go on some trips. That's the first step, without a doubt. Understanding that, honestly, though, life in a 10, 15-day mission trip is not at all anything resembling what it is to live there. But you need to have that exposure anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, this is what I'm going to do here, guys. All right, I'm putting my hat on. I am Pastor Randy. All right, I'm Pastor Randy, and I already got too many plates spinning. I am overtasked. I got so much going on. These people, I love them. This is, it's so much. And then you come on into my life and you challenge me and you say, what is your heart for the nations? And I can't get beyond the Smiths and the Johnsons. I can't. What do you mean nations? I got the Hatfields and McCoys here. I mean, what do you mean nations? This is all I got going on. I got a budget I gotta meet. Something. I think we have to replace our roof, and that's going to be like $30,000. And they have to repaint the parking lot, and the men's ministry is failing, and I got all this stuff going on. And you drop this thing of the nations on me. And it gets me. And in my prayer life, I'm going, oh God, it is so clearly part of the Great Commission. I've missed it. Please, Lord, 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 Lord. And then I turn back to you and I say, guys, you got me. What should I do? You're talking to the leader here. And one of the things that we've discovered in both interviews is so much of what we're talking about is top down.
I'll just jump in and get started. But
please,
having multiple years pastoring a church, that absolutely happens. Of course, we all know that. And what I had to do was regularly come back to which plates should I keep spinning? Because if you're spinning too many plates, you got to let some drop. And so you have to, I can't spin 10 plates. I can probably spin 2. So I just need to make sure they're the right 2. So I would just encourage people, what are priorities for us? It always came back to, and Scott, you mentioned it. It always came back to us, worship and missions. Those were our 2 priorities. Everything else came under them. So I would just say to that leader, you can't spin all those plates. You're not doing anything good. And so find your priorities, spin those well. And then the other tasks, they're going to get covered by other people. So, I know that sounds flippant, but if you're spinning too many plates, let some of them drop, but make sure they're the right ones and make sure you know what your call of God is. So that would at least get it started to think. Don't add one more. Find priorities.
Yeah.
Scott, before you jump in there, Christopher's got to bug off, and I need to let him go because I promised I would let him go. But what would you say to this poor pastor, brother?
Well, what I would say is go to this website called ymashville.org and send your people to do a discipleship training school, and we will set them on fire locally and globally.
There we
and
go.
serve you as a pastor.
There we go. Christopher, it's been really good having you in on this. And please share my love with Megan and the girls. And
absolutely.
I'm way overdue. Julie reminds me all the time that we're way overdue for visiting.
Yes, you are.
So
you almost came a few years ago, and we would love for you to come back. Come this time for sure. And I'm sorry.
Have a great day.
Packed my afternoon a little tight.
I know.
But
I know. Have a great day, brother.
Yes, sir. All right.
Love you, man.
Love you too.
Being with us.
Scott, how can you help this poor pastor?
Well, I wanted Rick to go first because he's got, I think probably of us 3 being interviewed, he's got the longest tenure of actually pastoring. I actually have never pastored a church in the United States. I pastored a church in Brazil. My wife and I actually planted a church and led that for some years cross-culturally, but I've never done it in the United States. But anyway, so I wanted to hear his perspective first.
Stop bragging, Scott. Stop bragging.
No. No, it's like, I kind of wish I've always we're going to live this whole life and never pastor a church here, but that's just the way it is. But, and the word that just coming is simplify, which is basically what Rick said. It's like when we share with leaders, when we're even sharing with them about our school of ministry, we always say things. It's like, if training leaders is not in your top 3 priorities, then you need to change your priorities.
Yeah.
Because only leaders can train leaders. That's not something that nobody else can do in your church. And I know that's kind of talking about at the leadership level, but that has the filter down or the flow up either way through is discipleship. Establishing a discipleship process in your church that leads through leadership training that involves the nations. It's really all kind of the same process. And catch my train of thought here, but so we just always it is priorities. Oh, this is what it was, and I come back to what I said before. It's not adding the Great Commission. It's like missions. We say this all the time. It's in my blogs. The Great Commission is not international missions. Mm-hmm. The Great Commission is not missions. We've made that synonymous in our church lingo. Yeah. But I say what I said before. The Great Commission is the mission of every church, because the Great Commission is
make disciples.
It's actually not even make disciples. The word make isn't even there. It's literally go and disciple the nations.
Yeah.
But it's, that begins obviously with where you're at. So it's like, we have this, what leaders got to do, especially church leaders, is not, we've compartmentalized the Great Commission as being missions, but it is not. And it's just what Christopher said, which was a really good thing. If it's not happening locally with that passion of reaching and discipling locally, then it's not going to go internationally. But having said that, I feel like that I've seen a pendulum swing in the American church. It's like we got so into missions. It's like we're like, okay, the pastor, all he talks about is missions. I think we need to bring it a little bit closer to home. So we've taken a pendulum swing kind of back to, well, let's just focus on local because that makes more sense. And our local people like that better because they feel like they're making more impact locally, getting a better return on their investment in their tithe or whatever. But we've got to bring that back. Unfortunately, culture is always a pendulum swing. I always say culture is never a river that's just evolving. It's always a pendulum swing, right? Just like clothes styles and glasses styles. It's the same thing in church. And we're just praying for a swing back to more balance of the nations. We need the local focus. But in the last 10, 15 years, we've gotten way too focused on that. And it's like I said, it's important to do that, but you can't do that at the exclusion or the reduction of the other levels of focus.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Tell you what I'm going to do, guys. First of all, I want to thank you. This has been awesome. You and I, we've done 2 interviews together. The first interview was why, and the second interview was how. If you could just collect your thoughts, we've kind of run out of time here, so I got to bring this to a conclusion. And I would like you to just share with us a parting comment. What is it that's fresh on your heart with regards to this topic of integrating a vision for the nations into our pursuit of the mission of discipleship? So what is fresh on your heart? If you were to leave one statement with our those who are viewing this, what would that statement be? And Rick, I'm going to begin with you. Go ahead.
That's a big question.
It is.
I would just say, and this is, I think it's very right now, even in the American culture, we can't get married to this world or the things of this world. We can't, period. And when we divorce the things of this world, we then are free to work eternally. And so my heart cry right now, and it's been for months and months and months, to the churches, stop getting involved and putting all your energy into civilian, the worldly affairs, and get eternal. And that includes the nations. So don't marry this one, marry the Lamb. Good. And do his work. Good. So that's what I would say.
Good word, brother. Good word. Scott, what would your parting comment be?
Yeah, we're very focused on culture and impacting people in different cultures. And having said that, I have to say that the last couple months, the culture of the United States has been very consuming. It's been hard to escape it. And even this day as we speak on January 5th, there's a major day going on in a state not next door to yours. Down there. So honestly, I have to say that we personally have been very focused on the United States in the last few months because it's hard not to be. But our general focus is always the kingdom. And this is just what Rick said, is the kingdom and having the kingdom impact culture and so forth. And one of the things that we always say is the kingdom itself, the kingdom doesn't directly impact an entire culture or nation itself. So it's like, there's a lot of movements to try to, let's impact this culture and so forth. The kingdom comes, and here's my parting thought. The kingdom comes into a culture, one disciple at a time. It's the kingdom coming into that person or that person aligning themselves with the kingdom that says, come thy kingdom be done, thy will on earth as it is in heaven. You want to impact your culture, it happens one disciple at a time. And our focus has to be on making those disciples, because that is the mission of the church. And that's the way the kingdom comes to the earth.
100 years ago, and this would be my parting comment, 100 years ago, I was taking a class at a particular Bible college. The professor's name was Carl Blackburn. This is not Elam, by the way. This is the Bible college I got kicked out of. Carl Blackburn. Carl Blackburn was a great guy. He and I had a great relationship. He was a veteran missionary to Africa before he came to the States. And he told the story often about when he was in Africa, about how this team from England, actually aristocrats from England, upper crust people from England, came, and they were interested in investing some significant funds into the mission outreach there in Africa. So they sent a team on down. And so they were going down, and they were going through the jungles, and they're, you know, doing all this stuff, and they're making progress and everything. And then at a particular point of the day, they stopped. And Carl was saying, this is not the right time to stop. We need to, says, no, this is the time to stop. We'll stop here. We'll stop for a couple hours, then we'll continue. And the guys came on up and opened up a tea set. And they served tea.
4 o'clock tea.
4 o'clock tea. They served it in the jungles of Africa. And Carl went to them and said, what are you thinking? And they said, we will always be citizens of the Queen. We are English first, no matter where we are. My parting comment is, guys, we are citizens of the kingdom first.
Yeah.
No matter where we are, everywhere else, strangers and aliens, sojourners. But we are first citizens of the King, and the King has sent us forth. Guys,
Amen.
thank you very, very much for spending this time with me. This has been excellent. And I'm asking Jesus that he would make this minimal effort 30-fold, 60-fold, Jesus, 100-fold fruitful for his kingdom and his kingdom's people. Amen.
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 Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.